this once. And I want to subscribe.
Kaizoku.
Hey y'all, so my dream is to make content full-time, but also I'm stupid and I am not making it any easier for myself because all the content on my channel is free. I don't lock any guides, deck lists, tier lists, or any other informational content behind a paywall. So if you like what I do and want to support me, consider backing me on Patreon. And even just sharing my content around or recommending my channel to people really helps, so I really appreciate it. Thank you! This video is sponsored by Card Market, Europe's largest online marketplace for trading card games. This video is sponsored by Sleeve Chief. When you walk away, you don't hear me say, please oh baby, use code Kaizoku for 5% off your order. That's right, Sleeve Chief is releasing 2 new Kingdom Hearts related products. It's their Chest of Memories deck box and their Keys of Memories border sleeves. All of this is out now on their website. So there's been a lot of discourse recently surrounding whether playing on the sim constitutes as meaningful practice compared to playing in real life. In fact, this conversation has existed since the beginning of the game actually. There seems to be this weird superiority complex that many in the community have developed against people who practice primarily on the sim. And to preface this video, I don't have a stance either way, right? I don't think IRL is better than sim. I don't think sim is better than IRL. I just kind of want to dispel a lot of flawed arguments that I see. Just wanted to give that heads up in case you think I'm biased towards the sim or something. Because yeah, despite being a channel that has put hundreds and thousands of eyes onto the sim, I'm in no way related or associated with the sim at all. You don't see my name anywhere in the sim. So I just wanted to preface with that so you guys know where I'm coming from with this. Even I personally in the past have been called a sim warrior unprovoked too, by the way, just randomly by people. Even though I have gotten top 32 twice, right? This is coming from a content creator who has to switch leaders every other day to keep the videos fresh and make these videos, edit those videos, on top of working a full-time job, on top of going out on the weekends, right? I'm not even seriously trying to compete at a competitive level, but I'm still able to top twice, thanks to primarily being able to play on the sim to make these videos. So I don't want all of that to be invalidated because people think that the sim doesn't equate to actual practice. I have the accomplishments to show for it. Despite topping not even being my main priority, I was still able to do it, thanks to practice on the sim. So in this video, I kind of want to go over some of the common criticisms and misconceptions about the sim that a lot of detractors like to bring up, and then hopefully maybe dispel some of it or even expound on some of it or even agree to. There's some valid criticisms of the sim. So the first point I want to go over is that the opponents on the sim are either low quality or they rage quit, and because of that you can't get meaningful practice. So yeah, at the beginning I would say this was an issue, but would you consider that an issue of the sim? Because the opponents you're playing are not part of the sim, right? It's just other people, other real life people in the real world who are using the same program as you, right? So I wouldn't really consider this a problem with the sim. It's a problem of the opponents that you're able to find. And what I don't get is how this isn't also a problem in real life as well, right? If you have a stacked locals where all the top playing players of the region all happen to live in your neighborhood, yeah, that's great. You're gonna have a lot more meaningful practice in that environment. But for a lot of people, maybe their locals or the friends that they play with are a lot more casual. In that case, the people you're playing with in real life, it's not gonna amount to anything greater than you would encounter on the sim as well, right? So it really comes down to the people that you have available to play against. If you have a friend that you can get a lot of meaningful practice with in person, I don't see how that changes once you suddenly hop on the sim and play against that same opponent, right? It's the same game, same rules. But yeah, the issue of finding quality opponents, I feel, is even greatly resolved on the sim itself with the inclusion of the ranked sim league that has been a feature within the sim for a couple of months now, right? There's literally a button within the sim itself that you can click to bring this up. You get faced against opponents that are of your caliber as you climb the ladder. This is harder to do in real life unless you're traveling hundreds of miles around you to play at different stores to find players of your own caliber. On the sim, you could do this from the comfort of your own home against anyone from anywhere globally. And this is a shout out to the ranked sim. This was a great addition that you can use in parallel to the sim. And I'm hoping this shout out gets them to like me again, because there was a period where I was kind of depressed and I ignored anyone who DM'd me. And yeah, sorry. I go through these weird periods of being like really antisocial and then social again, so it's just bad timing. So yeah, I never really got this kind of argument. You can have bad opponents in real life. The sim opponents aren't like scripted AI, even though it may feel like that sometimes. You're having to find good opponents to get meaningful practice on the sim, just as much as you have to find good opponents to have meaningful practice in real life. So it's like pretty much analogous. I don't see how one is better than the other in that case. Another point that I see brought up pretty often is that the sims like RNG is rigged. People complain about getting clumped hands when they play the sim, and that their hands in real life are a lot better than the ones that they get on the sim. This is just complete, like, I don't know, like BS. It's a lot of like confirmation bias, ratio bias. I'm not sure exactly what the name of this bias is, but to prove this point, I reached out to Batsu. He sent me the source code for how he shuffles the cards in the sim. I'll have it up on screen here. So if you're not familiar with this algorithm, it is the Fisher-Yates shuffling algorithm. It's like the gold standard for like unbiased shuffling, right? This is a way to calculate an unbiased permutation of a finite list. In fact, I'll even go over the algorithm with you if you want to show off my CS background. So the algorithm starts off with a list, empty list of integers that he initializes. Then he fills it with numbers between 0 and the number of cards in the deck, right? So at this point, it's a sorted list of numbers from 0 to, I'm guessing, 49 because there's 50 cards in the deck. And then after that, he has another for loop where this is where the Fisher-Yates algorithm comes into play. So you pick a number, a random number between I, which is your iterator, right? So you're starting at 0 and then the number of cards in your deck. And then once you have that random number, you are swapping the element at the current iterator with the element in the random location that you generated with the random function here, and that swaps it in place. And then you just repeat this, going one number up every time until every element in your list has been swapped randomly with the remaining items in the list. Yeah, this algorithm, this way of doing it is way more random than anything that you could do in person, shuffling these cards with your hand. And I just want to get ahead of it, but yeah, I know computers aren't truly random, right? It's like a pseudo randomness using like the entropy of the computer system to like simulate like a pseudo randomness, right? You're using stuff like, I don't know, the fan speed of your computer or like the current state of your memory on your computer, and it's just random different factors that when all combined together to generate a random number, it's incredibly hard for a human to recreate that state that the computer was in to generate that random number again. So for all intents and purposes, it is random. Like there's no way a human can recreate that same number. And it's like statistically like nearly impossible to do it by accident. So yeah, with this source code that he shared, I can confidently back up that this deck is properly randomly shuffled. Now, if you're saying that your hands in real life are better, it could just be that since you're able to play magnitudes in number of higher amounts of games on the sim than you would in real life, maybe you just encounter like clumped hands more on the sim, and then because of that, like you remember it more, right? It sticks in your mind. But I'm pretty sure if you took like the sample size and you like scaled it to the amount of games that you played in real life, it would pretty much be the same. It's like the example where like coin flip, right? It's 50-50. So if you flip the coin twice and it lands on heads both times, are you going to claim that the coin's RNG is broken because it's not truly 50-50, right? You flipped it 2 times, it should be heads and tails, right? But that's not how probability works in real life. You can get heads like 100 times in a row, and that's a completely valid result set, even though the coin flips are 50-50. It's just that when you scale it to like in the millions and billions of samples of coin flips, then yeah, you would start to see it trend to 50-50. So I think it's just like is that confirmation bias in that way? And another point I want to bring up is that if you truly are never seeing clumped hands in real life, you actually may be kind of cheating. I've seen people stack their decks and then not shuffle correctly or not shuffle enough. I've seen people in real life do stuff like look through their deck, and then if they see like a clump, like, oh, 2 hoodies next to each other, I don't want that. I'll leave one here and I'll put one like somewhere over here on the bottom half of the deck, and then they shuffle. This is adding a degree of control to your shuffling. It is not truly random, right? I don't see how you can argue that this is random because you specifically made it less likely that those 2 hoodies will be next to each other after a shuffle here. Like, yeah, you don't want 2 baby 5s, so you'll do something like that. I've seen people do this in real life events. So I don't know how you can claim that this is more random than the hands you get on the sim. I've even seen some people say that the fact that the sim is more random, that's a flaw, right? That in real life you're able to manipulate it like this so that you do get better hands. You're basically just admitting that you are cheating. You're not supposed to be able to do that. You're supposed to have like an effectively randomized deck after you shuffle. And that means that you have to shuffle enough too in real life. I don't know the exact like gold standard. I heard it was like 7 mass shuffles is enough to randomize it. At least that's what I recall off the top of my head. I don't know for sure. If you guys know, let me know in the comments below. But I've also seen people just like pile shuffle, right? And then they'll have their pile shuffle piles here, and then they'll just stack the decks and then present it to the opponent to cut. Pile shuffling is not randomized. You're just making 5 piles, and then like the quality of your mashes too matters too, right? Sometimes when you're mashing it, it still clumps together. I'm pretty sure people can cheat this way too, or like manipulate the probability of certain cards appearing together or not. So yeah, I don't know. I guess the only solution is like when your opponent passes you the deck to cut, instead of just cutting half and half, just shuffle their deck a few times too, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's what I had to illustrate with my real life deck here. Another criticism I see is that the sim doesn't let you take back a play, and that like misclicks invalidate your practice. So I will concede that, yeah, this is a feature not available in the sim, but I don't understand why it's a negative, right? You can't blame the sim for not teaching you how to play in like a IRL environment, and then under the same breath criticize it for not letting you keep your bad habits of misplaying cards and making mistakes as you play that you shouldn't be making in real life environments anyway. So if anything, the sim is teaching you good habits of not how to miss sequence in real life. Because yeah, you can get like judge called for stuff like that, right? It's teaching you the proper way to do things. And even if you're the type of person who wants to be able to take stuff back and misclick a few times, like I don't think misclicking in a couple of your games like completely invalidates the amount of practice you get from like the 100 of other games that you have played that you didn't misclick, right? It's like if you played like 20 games and you misclicked in like 5 of those games, does that invalidate the 15 other games that you just practice with? No, right? If you misclick, just concede, rematch, or go next. You know, it's that simple. I don't see how that invalidates any practice that you can get on the sim. And to be honest, if you are misclicking so much that it's actually interfering with practice, I chalk that up to user error, not the sim, right? That's on you to stop missequencing things. These are like habits that you should fix in a real life environment anyway. Another criticism I see is that the sim doesn't get you used to playing with actual cards in hand. The sim doesn't simulate the pressure of playing in like a real life event. So yeah, I would say that this is true, right? This is something that the sim obviously cannot simulate because you're playing on a computer at home. But whether this is important or not, I think this is purely subjective based on like anecdotal evidence, as there's evidence of pro players with multiple tops who almost exclusively practice on the sim. So if there's pros who need IRL practice and can't play on the sim, and then there's pros who can practice exclusively on the sim and don't need to play in person, then like the issue is not that the sim can't be a useful tool for you to practice. It's just that some people practice in different ways, you know? So yeah, if this is something you need practice for, like having actual cards in hand and then having the pressure of someone like looking at you across the table playing in real life, then yeah, the sim is not something that this can replicate. This is something you're gonna have to get practice with in some other way. And it also doesn't let you practice stuff like for Lucci, for instance. A lot of Lucci players like to separate their trash out, put their CP cards together, and then their stuff to return to the bottom of the deck together. This is something you can't do on the sim, right? So that's something that you would need something external to practice for. Or like I even heard people saying that their mind goes blank when playing in a real life situation. This is something the sim cannot provide practice for. So yeah, I wouldn't say this is like a negative of the sim. I would say this is just something that the sim cannot account for, in which case you'll have to like look for other ways to accommodate this, right? And not everyone has these problems. Some people may have it, some people may not. So I don't think you can definitively say that because the sim cannot replicate these conditions that it's a not meaningful practice, right? One thing that really confused me though is that there's people who do say like IRL practice is the only way to get better and that sim practice it doesn't amount to anything. But they're also the same people who pay for like Patreon deck articles to avoid having to practice more in real life, right? They're taking the learnings of a pro player and then making that like a shortcut to having to practice more in real life, while also telling people like practicing in real life is the only way to get better. Don't use external resources like the sim to practice, but it's okay to use Patreon deck articles for some reason, right? So there's like some hypocrisy there, right? And weirdly enough, it's sometimes the people who write the Patreon articles who are saying that like IRL practice is the only way to get better, but then they're like also trying to sell you a Patreon deck article so that you don't have to practice more IRL. I don't know, it's weird, right? I just kind of wish they were more consistent with their stance, or like aware of the irony of what exactly they're saying. So now that we've gone over the criticisms and like established the shortcomings of the sim, I'd like to go over what the sim is great for. So first off, convenience. Some people don't have locals near them, and this is a way to play from home, or maybe their locals aren't as high level, or potentially they have a schedule that doesn't accommodate for them to be able to make it out to locals, right? People have to work real jobs, they have real lives, though I'm sure like a lot of people who play this game are like students with a lot of free time. But yeah, the reality is being able to play from home at any time against any opponent, that convenience is like one of the biggest selling points of playing on the sim. Another benefit is the volume of games you can play. You can play way more games online, and again, yeah, at any time of the day with any opponent. You don't have to make it out once a week to your local to play for like 2 or 3 hours. That's the only time you can get meaningful practice at a local. Or if you need to meet up with a friend in person, you have to check with their schedule and check if you have a place to play, stuff like that. Another great benefit of the sim is you're basically using proxies. You don't need to actually own the cards. You're able to test out cards before you commit money to buy them. I think this is another great feature of the sim. We're even able to test cards before they're even released, right? Batsu is usually pretty good at getting cards released before a set is even out for us, or even in Japan too. And then another benefit of the sim is the level of competition. Again, with the ranked sim, you can play opponents of way higher caliber, opponents of your own level too, right? This will help you get to see where you kind of stack up, right? You'll get to the point where you're averaging 50-50 in wins. This is like where you establish your elo to be, and then from there you'll be able to establish where your shortcomings are, what things you need to practice, what things you need to get better at. And then as you see your win rate increase, you'll get like meaningful like progress out of that. That's something that I think is a great thing to do on the sim. Meanwhile, if you play against opponents in real life, you don't know if the opponent is going to be at your power level or not. There's no like a ranking system in person for you to easily determine that. And lastly, a benefit of the sim is that it's easy to review your games, right? It's much easier to record your computer screen than like bringing a camera to an IRL event and asking each of your opponents if it's okay to film the match. So in conclusion, the sim is just a tool you can utilize. Whether it's effective or not is entirely up to the individual. It's up to you. So I don't see where this attitude, or like why people feel so strongly that they can say objectively that the sim is not a great tool to practice with. Everyone is different and has their own preference in like learning modalities. Some people find more meaningful practice with physical cards, while others can proxy just fine with a digital client. For the same reason, some people can just study off of theory and read books and pass tests, while other people need like hands-on experiences, or like have to do like labs or worksheets to get the subject matter in school, right? People learn differently. There's evidence of that in your life. I don't think one is better than the other. In fact, it's probably a combination of both things that works the best, right? You're able to adjust the practice you need depending on your own shortcomings. So if you need more real life experience, you could put a little bit more focus on real life events, but still keep sim practice as a like thing you can do on your downtime, and vice versa, the other way around. And yeah, it just feels like any objective claim that one is better than the other is always based off of like purely anecdotal evidence, as there's always someone with the like antithetical experience, like the opposite experience, right? There's always someone who says like, oh, I can't practice on the sim, it doesn't help me win. And then there's another guy who says like, oh, I practice exclusively on the sim and it helps me win, right? If these are both valid experiences with people who have valid accomplishments, like the only conclusion I can come up with is that everyone is different, everyone learns differently, everyone can utilize these tools in different ways. So I just think it's really stupid to like definitively claim that one thing is better than the other. It really depends on how you use these tools. It's always up to you, down to you in the end. So I hope that clears up a lot of the misconceptions about the sim. I don't know, I'm just kind of annoyed and tired of seeing these same old arguments being made. And yeah, that's all I had for this video. So what do you guys think? Does that change your mind on some things? I hope this can clear up some of like the flawed arguments I keep seeing again and again, especially on like the sim RNG. That's always been like the dumbest kind of argument I've seen floating around. And if there's anything I missed, feel free to comment in the comment section down below. If there's enough, maybe I'll even do like a part 2, because this is just stuff that came off the top of my head. Maybe there's more things I should talk about, but yeah, do let me know. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, I would really appreciate it. And thanks for watching. Bye.
Car D Kaizoku.